What have we got here? By the way, if you want to leave a comment for me, if you want to ask me a question for the mailbag, you can go to lizwheelershow.com/locals. lizwheelershow.com/locals. This is an exclusive privilege just for VIP supporters to ask any question, and this happens on a weekly basis. So go to lizwheelershow.com/locals. Our first question from the mailbag today is from Joe Mo XX88, who says, this is a funny question. Do you and your staff do concealed carry? Joe, I'm not going to betray our security procedures because that would reduce their efficacy. But let me just tell you, I, as an individual, believe that it is my responsibility as an adult and as a citizen to fully protect myself and to be confident and competent in the use of a firearm should that necessity arise. And my team, my staff, my studio, we do everything necessary to protect everyone involved in the production of this show. So I'm not going to answer that question directly because I don't know what kind of creeps and losers are also listening to this show. I don't want to betray any of the details of our security detail, but rest assured, we are very well protected. We are very secure. We are very safe. Hope that answers your question. All right. Sometime I'll tell you the story about, no, maybe I'll tell it to you now. I'll tell you the story about the time that when my husband and I were dating, he's former military, he was Navy. He was in the Navy at the time. He took me back to his hometown for the first time, and we went shooting at this shooting range that was like not a very official shooting range. It was more like this little clearing in the woods where at the very end were like targets and stuff. But it was outdoor. It was very unofficial. There was no one running it. You just had to be part of the shooting club of the town to be able to use it. And let's just say I won the contest that we had. I won that contest. We were using Glock 19s, and I won that contest. So you can ask him. You can verify this. You can verify this story. This is absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I'm very proud of it. And while that was nearly 10 years ago, as you can imagine, I don't let him live that down even to this day. The one and only time that I defeated him at that contest, but very proud of that. Okay, next question is from Amy B. Amy says, what are your top 3 issues for the 2024 election, and who do you think would be best suited for the job, whether they have officially declared or not? Well, let's take the first half of that question first. What are my top 3 issues for the 2024 election? And it's actually hard for me to narrow it down to 3 issues. I would say my number 1 issue is Marxism. Marxism comes in several forms. It comes in the form of queer theory, the transgender ideology that's being indoctrinated into our kids, that's infiltrated our institutions, from our schools to our medical community to the government. It's destroying children, and we should stand against it because of the children who are being destroyed. We should stand in defense of those children, but we should also stand against it because the ultimate goal of queer theory, of the Marxist transgender ideology, is the destruction of our nation. Marxism also comes in the form of critical race theory. It's the same thing. It assaults particularly children, white children, black children, telling white children that they are racist because of the color of their skin. Black children, they're oppressed inherently because of the color of their skin. And it calls for revolution. It's supposed to pit one demographic of people against the other in order to agitate for a revolution whose ultimate goal is the destruction of our nation and the imposition of Marxism. We also have Marxist enemies abroad. We have a Marxist ideology that exists within the World Economic Forum, the Klaus Schwabian worldview that has taken root in our country in the form of ESG metrics and ratings, which is the social credit score system where companies and businesses are ranked against metrics like sustainability and DEI and corporate citizenship, which just means abortion activism. And if companies don't get a rating high enough, then they can face discrimination in the marketplace. They can, from banking institutions and investment firms, they can be denied access to loans or good rates for these loans. Basically, access to capital, which is necessary for entry and existence in the market. They can face discrimination on that front. It's actually what we're seeing with Anheuser-Busch, right? This company that ostensibly was apolitical, whose consumer base is a very conservative consumer base, and because of pressure from the Human Rights Campaign, actually a subsidiary of the Human Rights Campaign, I think it was called the Corporate Equality or Corporate Equity Index. I assume equity, Corporate Equity Index. pressures corporations to take part in transgender activism in order to increase their ESG score. This is all forms of Marxism, right, that are trying to subvert our cultural institutions, which is a very Antonio Gramsci-esque form of Marxism. Marxism is my number one issue in the 2024 election. If politicians and political candidates don't acknowledge the reality of this political enemy that we face, name it as Marxism, understand the different forms that it takes, then we're not going to be able to fight well against this onslaught, this cultural onslaught, and we risk losing our culture. And if we lose our culture, then we will ultimately lose our system of self-governance, our freedom and our liberty and our justice for all. So that's certainly my top issue. My number two issue is probably election integrity, because what we saw in 2022 in the midterm elections is that even if people are generally dissatisfied with the president, even Democrats were dissatisfied with Joe Biden, we see inflation, high gas prices, high food prices, which results in people's wages, while technically increasing, their real value is decreasing. Even with this kind of dissatisfaction, we did not see Republicans win in the red wave that was predicted that they would. And I know that part of this is the vilification of the Republican name. Part of this is the effective onslaught that the Democrats have pushed on voters, saying if you're a Republican, then you are a white supremacist, you're a racist, you are a homophobe, a transphobe, a xenophobe. They've been very effective in branding the Republican name as being hateful and bigoted and extreme and domestic terrorist. But that's not the only reason that what happened in 2022 happened. It's also not the only reason that Joe Biden won in 2020. The reason that those happened is electioneering. And I'm very careful when I use this word, electioneering, because I know there's been a lot of wild accusations about different things that happened around the 2020 election. And when I say electioneering, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about states around the country who changed the procedures surrounding their elections, whether this be drop boxes that were placed in places around the city that were unmanned, they were available 24/7, whether this was ballot harvesting that was previously not allowed because of the obvious vulnerability to fraud, whether this is universal mail-in ballots that were sent without request to every voter in the state, sometimes to dead voters, sometimes to people showing up at people's houses when they've already moved. I'm talking about rules that were changed without the authority of the state legislature that were counter to the constitution of the state, like what happened in the state of Wisconsin. Election integrity plays an enormous role in whether or not we even have the capacity to compete with Democrats in 2024. So on two fronts, the Republicans need to understand what we're facing. They need to understand that while Republicans prefer election day, we want people to vote in person on one day, and Democrats prefer election season. They want people to vote anywhere they want, at a drop box, at their home, or at a polling place for multiple weeks, if not months. We cannot surrender competing with the Democrats during election season just because we prefer election day. Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.